Hey, it's the end of the session. This is the roadmap to success for Barrington and Brixton. The dogs are obviously not here because we did this session remotely, did a virtual session due to coronavirus. But this is the roadmap to success, kind of a summary of the things that we went over. Now, the first thing we started talking about was exercise. A lot of dogs are under exercised. Now the dogs go for a walk, but because basically Brixton is going after Barrington and when they get stressed out at unusual times on walks, the Guardian's been walking them separately. I would like to make sure that we're getting the dogs at least one walk together, that parallel walk, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. So we need to build in positive associations with the two dogs together. Otherwise, the last thing they remember is that we got in a fight with each other, and that's the last thing, my freshest memory. So what we want to do is look for some creative ways of exercising. The dogs like to fetch. Unfortunately, the backyard is kind of occupied right now. If you have the ability to move and clear an area where they can run back and forth on one side, play fetch, even if you're just doing it with one dog at a time, that would be a great way to go about it. Now, whenever the yard gets back to normal, or if you can find a place where a friend's house that has a backyard where you can play fetch, remember to fetch with each dog with an empty stomach the first time and keep fetching, count each fetch until you find out how many fetches is the maximum number. When the dog just like, we're done, I'm not doing it anymore. We need to know what that maximum number of fetches is. You want to exercise your dog about 50 to 75% of that maximum number of fetches multiple times a day, ideally every 2 to 4 hours. Now, since Barrington seems to be a little bit more of the laid back dog, he might not need as much exercise. Brixton is kind of an anxious dog and didn't get a lot of socialization practice, so might be need more exercise more frequently. So keep that exercise journal that I talked to you about. Write down the new page for each day. Write down the dog's names in 2 columns at the top, and then the time on the left side, and then write down the time and how many fetches, the time and how long the walk was, the time and how many scent games, or whatever the exercise was. And if there is a Brixton goes after Barrington, or if freaks out at the door, or whatever, anything that's noteworthy, write down the time and what was going on. Don't have to write a book, but just enough things to remember to spur your memory. And after a while, and then at the end of the day, you give each dog a letter grade A through F. If the dog got anything other than an A, then the next day play around with the elements. Instead of maybe doing fetch 25 times, maybe do it 35 times, or doing 25 fetches, or a fetch of 25 twice a day, maybe do it 3 or 4 times a day. The idea is to kind of play around with the elements until we figure out how much exercise the dog needs and what sort of vehicles you can use to get the dog that exercise that is reasonable and will work with your schedule. Now remember some of the other creative ways that we can exercise, and I should have this linked on your write-up, but the Doggy Stairmaster, if you have a place that has stairs. Scent games, hiding treats around the house. The dog has to use its nose for them. Now be careful, because treats can be a high value item that can create a response or a fight. We don't want that to be the case. So maybe do that with them separately. Feeding out the Omega Paw treat ball, that orange ball that I showed you with my little dog Max on the floor. It's called an Omega Paw treat ball. You can get them on Amazon or Chewy. Get the large one. And I would have one of those, and just if one dog needs a little bit of a little energy, take it into a room and put some treats or some food in that and let the dog nudge it around the room. Just make sure after when it's empty, you pick it up and put it up somewhere. A lot of dogs will tear it open to see why it's not paying off treats when it's empty. Also, I want you to get those snuffle mats. Now remember, the one that I used is the gray one. It's probably the first one you'll see if you search for snuffle mat on Amazon. If you feed them out of that will really, really help. That using the nose to find food boosts their confidence. It drains some energy. It makes them work for their food, which also is confidence building, and it slows down the feeding process. So there's a bunch of things that are beneficial from that, and it essentially gets close to a walk. So if you're feeding out of those twice a day. Now, I want to go over a couple of things before I forget. So I would probably feed in the structured feeding, and I'm going to try to link that in the write-up as well. So when you're eating, you're going to go in the kitchen, put both bowls of food down, but the dogs have to stay out of the kitchen line, so don't let them under the tile. Then you put the 2 bowls of food down, different sides of the room, and make sure you put Barrington's bowl closer to the area that the dogs are, because he's going to eat first. He has more of the behavior that you're looking for. So basically, you're going to eat something of 5 more bites, chip, cracker, piece of carrot, whatever it is. Then when you're done, you invite Barrington to come in. When Barrington comes over and goes over his bowl, or his snuffle mat, whichever the case may be, he has, once he addresses it, he's on the clock. Now, if he just looks, sniffs it and walks away and says, I'll eat it later, now you raised him as a free feeding dog, but I just worry that a fight might eventually break out. So once he walks away, pick up his bowl, dump it back in the container, put the empty bowl back on the floor. 99% of the time, the dog will lick the empty bowl. Once he licks it and he looks at you, he's like, man, what happened? Well, hey, buddy, when you don't eat the food that's in the bowl, it goes away and it's not appearing again till the next meal. That motivates him to want to eat when you tell him to. Remember, eating is the most important activity for dogs. They spend 90% of their time in the wild looking for food. So if you have dominion over the food, it really helps them see you as an authority figure. And also helps them practice self-restraint. If I can't come in the kitchen until it's my permission time to eat and I have to get permission, now I'm practicing some self-restraint. So once Barrington recognizes the food is either eats all his food or you dump it, then he has to leave the area. And be careful when they're leaving, because that could be one of those times. Remember, look for stiffness, slow motion, heavy breathing, hackles going up, those sort of things. That would be, if that's the case, try to increase the distance between the dogs as Barrington leaves. And then you're going to invite Brixton in. Brixton comes in to eat, and when Brixton is eating, Barrington's not allowed to be in. So only one dog eating at a time. Most dogs should be able to eat. The snuffle mat will make the feeding take a little bit longer, but a snuffle mat should be less than 5 minutes for each dog. And then once that's done, then you pick up the snuffle mat and put it up. If it's the bowl, then dump the bowl empty. So when they come back in, they can lick each other's bowls, but there's never any food there. So there's nothing to guard or protect. And again, this is a wonderful activity that develops some self-restraint, respect for you as an authority figure. It helps them practice, and help them see you as an authority figure. So there's a lot of benefits to this one as well. So other things that you can do, get the doggy backpack. Remember, they should be about $45 to $85 a piece for each dog. Load them up, put a couple bottles of water, put some bags of sand, some rocks from Nebraska or whatever it is in there. And so now the dog is carrying weight that makes the walk more efficient. It also gives them a job. And a lot of times when a dog has a job, they don't get in as much trouble. Now on walks, Barrington sniffs a lot, Brixton doesn't. So we want to start helping Brixton get in a habit of doing that. A great way to do that is before your walk, get some finely shredded cheese. I prefer Swiss because it's a really strong smell. And don't do it the whole time, but go on this side of the walk, and if there was a little bit of grass, sprinkle a little tiny handful. And so there's maybe about 2 or 3 inches of shredded cheese. And then just kind of walk and leave. So you go out ahead of time before the dog and load this up. Maybe every house, so on this house, it's on this side. The next house, it's on this side of the sidewalk, so it's back and forth. And then basically you kind of lead Brixton to it. And if you have to, you tap with your foot. But eventually you start sniffing the ground and licking up this cheese. Remember, dogs burn more energy on a walk by sniffing than they do from walking. So if we can get them programmed to start sniffing, or him to start sniffing some more, that's going to really help burn some energy. And it's also how he should experience the world. So we're kind of using a cheat to get him to do what he should be doing naturally. So, and again, it's on this side, then on this side. Now, first, it's maybe there's a little strip on, 6-inch strip on either side of the sidewalk in every house. But after a while, maybe it's every other house. And don't put it in the same places. We want him to start looking and sniffing around to look for that cheese on his own. And that's why at first we've loaded up either side of every house, but then eventually it's every other house, every third house, every once in a while, and eventually just at the end of the block or whatever it is. So that way he is using his nose to find it, and that gets him burning more energy. So let me see, what else? I also like you to do some parallel walking. This is really, really important. Now, when Barrington or Brixton is lunging at Barrington, that's waiting way too long. When it comes to dog behavior, we want to catch the dog way, way, way in advance. The very first signs, I'll go through the warning signs you're going to look for. The first sign is usually going to be a stare, usually with a lowered head. So as soon as you see the dog staring, that's like level 1. That's when we want to do the focus exercise or increase the distance, get them out of there long before they're reacting. If they're reacting, you missed all the signs, you waited way too long. At that point, you have to just pull them away with your muscles, but that's way too late. So other things they could do is they can hold their breath, or they can start breathing really heavy. A lot of times the ears will come forward or go very far back. Often their pupils will dilate. Their tail will often go up and hold still or be very quivering. The hackles will go up, which you've noticed. The body language will get stiff. Moving in slow motion is a big warning. So if you ever see one of them moving in slow motion and the other one, try to call them away. And that's why I'd like you to give them dog bed commands. And call the ones on either side of the TV, whatever you want, but I'd like you to create a dog bed and put it somewhere else away from the TV and come up with a specific name for that. So this way, if you see the two dogs are crossing each other and they're going really slow, you can say Hawaii, Jamaica, and one goes over there, and one goes over there. And now the dogs are moving and separating themselves. If you say something, a lot of times that can be the spark that causes it. So teaching them by just throwing the treats there. Remember, for the dog bed, what you do is you just throw a treat on the dog bed, one dog at a time. The dog goes and has one or more paws on the dog bed and licks it up. You say Jamaica or whatever the word is for it. So you do this about 10 to 15 treats in a row. The next stage is when the dog's looking there, you throw a treat over there or leave one there so he doesn't see it, but you just loaded him with 15 or 20 treats. So now he's kind of like, he's just checking it. Oh, shoot, there's a treat. He goes over and licks it up. You say Jamaica again. Third way, you can lead him into it, put him in a sit or a down, put the treat in his mouth and say Jamaica. So these are the 3 ways to entice him to go there. Then what you want to do is have like a treat pouch like this with you, and we'll just have some in your pocket. Just if you have them in your pocket, sometimes I forget and I let them go through the wash. So as soon as the dog goes over on its own, then you take a treat and you throw the treat. So now every time I go to Jamaica, it rains treats. So if you do this, it shouldn't take very many practices before the dog starts going there. And you want to keep on practicing until eventually you can say Jamaica, Venice, Honolulu, or whatever the words are, and the dog goes to that dog bed just from the verbal command only. So keep practicing that. All right, for the parallel walking, what I'd like you to do is find a park, somewhere where you guys can be as close to each other as you can, but far enough away where Brixton can actually relax. And so what you want to do is find a place where Barrington can relax and just sit down on the floor with whoever's handling him and sit down on the grass. And then the other person with Brixton just kind of walk back and forth until his body relaxes. His shoulders kind of go down. He doesn't look as stiff. He's not just staring or pulling towards them. And then eventually, once he's nice and relaxed, it'd be a nice idea to get him to sit, do a little bit of that focus exercise, pet him a little bit. We want him to practice being around and sitting with the other dog at a distance and the other guardian at a distance and relaxing. Once they're both nice and relaxed, then we both get up and walk parallel. So you're keeping the same distance, and you might have to ebb and flow. So Brixton might have to move a little bit further away, and Barrington can go on the straight path. The idea is we want to keep on practicing in parks where we have a lot of open space where we can avoid other people, and keep on doing that until eventually we can get the distance, which is going to be the same distance as across the street. Because I would like you to start walking the dogs together just on opposite sides of the street. And then gradually, if we're parallel walking, you gradually get closer and closer and closer. So it kind of gets triangular in shape. That's going to probably take several walks. But what we want them to do is practice being together without being reactive, or at least Brixton not being reactive. Sounds like Barrington's fine, but eventually that will wear off for Barrington, and he'll start looking where Brixton is. And that's going to be a problem. So I'd like you to practice walking them at least twice a day. Now, this parallel walking. Now, when they're doing this is a good time to use that cheese on Brixton's side of the street. So he's sniffing and looking for that as opposed to staring at Barrington. Remember, staring is often going to be what's going to get them into trouble. Now, in the house, if there's a little fight like there was today, pull out some treats. Now, you have to keep them apart until they kind of relax. And one of the things that they'll do is they'll call avoidance. They'll avoid looking at you or the other dog intentionally. That means it's still going on. If you see the breathing heavy, the pupils are dilated, the hackles are up, the tail's stiff, all those things are kind of your indicators. One of the things I'd like you to do is actually observe your dogs when they're nice and relaxed and what we call balanced, in a nice, calm frame of mind. Look at the ears. See where they're carrying the ears. See where the tail is. The tail should be, if this is the spine and the dog's head is here, we'd like to see the tail going straight off in the middle. Not too high. This is more confrontational, alerting, protective, assertive, dominant, commanding. This is more relaxed. Now, between the tail, like phallic, that's insecure. Remember, don't ever pet them if they're fearful. You can lay your hand on them, but try to avoid petting them when they're doing anything that's unwanted, any unbalanced state of mind like fear, stress, anxiety. If they're barking or any of those things, you're trying to console the dog, you're just going to reinforce whatever they happen to be doing at the time. So I think fetch is going to be one of the best things you can do. I'm going to try to post a video of me dog skiing with a client dog or one of my dogs. If one of you can ride a skateboard or have rollerblades, that is one of the easiest ways that you can burn some energy. You can hold a leash on either side. I have 3 dogs. I take them all at the same time. That takes a little bit of work. I would have you do it with one dog at a time first. And there's a special harness you need. So if you want to do this, let me know. I can show you where you can get the harness. It distributes the weight a little bit better. But if you have a path that's nearby or just some side streets that are nice and smooth and not a lot of hills, it's a great way. I can go about 3 miles in about 15 to 20 minutes with my dogs, and they come back and they are wiped for quite a while. Now, also, you can set your dogs up for success before the construction guys come back to work in your backyard. Make sure they get exercise before the construction guys come. You have guests coming over, exercising them. Exercise is a great way to set your dog up for success. Tired dogs are much less likely to get into trouble. And an average dog needs an hour's worth of exercise every single day. High energy dogs typically need more. I think Brixton probably needs a little bit more than that. And that's why I want you to keep that exercise journal. All right, so if they do get in a fight in the house, we want to obviously get them apart and get back to that neutral body language. And maybe take them in a different room and then do some focus or sit. Have them kind of go into working mode is a nice way to kind of snap them out of it. Now, I would keep a bucket of water in the backyard. If they do get in a fight, the best thing to do is dump water on them. I know it's not always convenient, but when I go to dog parks, I always have like a big gulp thing of water, just a ginormous glass or a plastic one, just full of water so I can splash it. If it's a water bottle, it's going to come out so little, it's not going to make an impact. If you do have to separate them, grab them by their rear paws and pull them apart. Avoid pulling them when they're latched onto each other. You can actually cause some damage that way. In a fight, you got to do what you got to do, but the key is really, again, to find or recognize those warning signs and get them out of that long before that gets to that point. So if they do have a little dust up in the house, separate them, take them to rooms, do some focus and some up downs and sits and some other commands. When they both seem to be relaxed, bring them back in the room and then have 2 treats, one in each hand. Take a couple steps backwards, they come, and then they sit and sit. Then take a couple more steps down, down. So the idea is you want the dog sitting in unison, laying down in unison, coming to you in unison. So they're doing something together and they're getting a treat. Now be careful, don't let Barrington come over sniffing Brixton's treat or vice versa, because that treats can create a problem. But from what I saw in the video, I think that'll be a really beneficial thing for you to do. We want to help jumpstart them on thinking about something else that they can do that's positive, as opposed to dwelling on the fact he just snapped at me when I had a ball. Now, if there is a fight over an item, I'd like you to start making a list of the items. If it is a resource guarding issue, we might just set up a session where we work on doing some counter conditioning and teach them that there's no reason to need to resource guard, but we need to know a list of those things, and it's sometimes inconsistent. So just kind of keep a list on your phone or whatever it is, and that way you can just keep on adding to it as we need to. All right, let me see. Parallel walking cheese. The cheese you'll use less and less as you're going through it. But find that park, the open area. Don't try to do the distance thing in your neighborhood. At least practice 2 or 3 times at a park so you can have enough distance. Remember, you got to wait for Brixton to be relaxed, and it might take a little bit of time. So you want to find a park where there's not going to be a ton of people or activity at. It's easier said than done, but at least you're not in LA. It'll be worse here. Okay, let me see. I'm going to include a bunch of videos, how to stop jumping, how to wait at the door, structured feeding, and some things along those lines, as well as petting with a purpose and passive training. But let me summarize the rest of the stuff we went over. Remember, breaking a rule is a horrible way to reward a dog. If you want to reward them, belly rubs, go for a walk, play tug of war, whatever it is, don't break rules to reward them. That just confuses them. It causes frustration. I think frustration is the cause of a lot of the problems that you guys are having between the 2 dogs. Let me see, what else do we want to do? Other housekeeping things. Remember, dogs learn through repetition, consistency, and good timing. And you have 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog for them to have the ability to make that connection. So if you come home and your dogs are excited and they're jumping up, you say, calm down. Well, the only time I hear calm down is when I'm jumping up. And every time I jump up and down, I hear the word calm down. So clearly, calm down means jump up and down. So on walks, be careful about what you say. Don't say, it's okay, good boy. It's okay, good boy. Every time that Brixton gets nervous, that can create and become a command word. Now, remember, anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're specifically amplifying or rewarding. So if you pet a dog who's jumping up on you, that's what the behavior you're telling the dog, I want more of. Also, remember, anything your dog does in your presence that you don't specifically disagree with is getting your seal of approval. So not saying no is akin to saying yes. The only time I ignore the dog is if it's barking at me for attention, something I don't want to validate. Because remember, good attention and bad attention are pretty much the same thing. Also, I'd like you to do some watchwords. Vocabulary means you're using the different version of the command. I want you to come up with a list of the official command words, one word for each command. Try to make them funny command words if you haven't settled on one. Make funny words for your dog beds. And every new command, I want you to try to come up with funny commands, because remember, dogs can read facial expressions. So if you say a meatball and the dog goes and eats and you laugh, well, that makes the dogs feel a little bit more relaxed. And so there are a lot of benefits to that. That's cutting edge dog training now. In 5 years, that's what everybody would be doing. So vocabulary means you're using the different version of the word. Come here instead of come. I say scrabble if the person's saying too many words. The dog sits, I say, oh, what a good dog. You sat down before I even had a chance to tell you. That's scrabble. That's way too many words. You want to say just one word. Remember, dogs hear the first words you say. come, questions came, so I'm petting him and celebrating. That's something that I like. Celebrate means that you're missing an opportunity to pet the dog for something you like. Remember, a lot of us train our dogs to misbehave. It barks, we tell it to stop. It jumps up, we tell it to stop. It chews our furniture, we say stop, or we yell at it. Jumps to the door, we go open the door. But if it sits, we ignore that. It lays down, we ignore that. Remember, I asked you what the dog should do to make you happy, and you guys struggled. So I want you to, through your actions, start communicating to the dogs the things that are important to you, and that's by celebrating those things when the dog offers them on its own. So every time the dog comes to you, reach down, pet it under its chin, and say the word come. Every time it sits, pet it and say sit. Every time it lays down, pet it and say crash or chill or whatever the word is. Remember to pet under the chin and avoid patting on top of the head. You can pet anywhere you want, sit. Just don't pet on top of the head because that creates that down nose orientation. Remember, if they're nervous, you can lay your hand on them, but don't pet them when they're nervous. If they're nervous or anxious, increase the distance, get them away from whatever it is, and then do a focus exercise or something else to get their mind off of it. Let me see, what else? We also talked about petting with a purpose. Petting with a purpose is and Quest is doing it right now, he just pawed at me. If I pet him when he does that, remember, leaders tell, followers ask. So if he tells you to pet him, and you pet him, then that validates that you're in charge of him, or he's in charge of you, excuse me. Remember, a lack of rules means that we are peers. Being able to tell you what to do means that I'm in charge of you or I have more rank or authority than you. So petting with a purpose is a great way to help your dog start to see you acting like a leader because you don't listen to them. You give them a counter order. Tell them to sit. They're already sitting here. Tell them to sit over here or tell them to lay down. They have to do something to change their state, but don't practice the shake anymore. It's related to why the dogs jump up. So as soon as the dog sits, you pet it on his chin, say the word sit. If it doesn't sit, you lean back and watch TV and show the dog, I got other things to do. You missed out. Remember, if you get something too much, it's no longer valuable. You have to work for it, and it's a precious commodity. Right now, hand sanitizer, that shit is gold right now during coronavirus because everybody bought it all. You can't get it. Now everybody wants it. Same thing for you. You can make your pets more valuable by withholding them a little bit and making the dog earn them. So if you get in a habit of petting with a purpose, every time you pet your dog, it increases the dog's respect for you as an authority figure. It helps the dog feel good about itself, and confident dogs are less likely to be reactive because it earned that a pet for doing something good as opposed to just looking good. And number 3, it helps it practice sitting and laying down, which will make it easier to sit or lay down outside in your backyard, on walks, and so on and so forth. Now, I skipped the rules section. Rules are super duper important. For dogs, the leaders are the ones who enforce rules. A lack of rules means we are peers, and if we are peers, then listening to you is now optional. So make sure that you are enforcing some rules. I'll probably have it linked above, but we talked about no furniture, order those X mats. Order them on Chewy if you can't get them on Amazon if they're not shipping right away, but you'll get them eventually. So no furniture. You can go down to their level and cuddle with them as much as you want. They just can't come up to your level. And remember, don't break a rule later on to reward them. If you want to reward them, lay down on the floor and rub their belly and all the rest of that stuff. Just don't let them come up to your level. And these rules should be placed a minimum of 3 months. Minimum, bare minimum. Nobody should be able to get the minimum. Minimum is 3 months. It's probably going to be longer. I always say 3 months or as long as the problems are still going on. When they're relaxed and they're playing together, you could think about it relaxing the rules, but you might undo the work and the progress they got. And that's one of the things you guys wanted to see the dogs playing together. Well, let's make them peers down at that level while the humans are up at this level. Other rules, I have to sit at the door. Go to the door and say sit once. If the dog doesn't sit within 3 seconds, walk away, sit down, make sure you're seated somewhere. Wait 1 minute. Then go back to the door and tell the dog to sit again. If it doesn't sit, then walk away for 2 minutes when you're sitting down, then sit down for 4 minutes, 8 minutes, and so on. But as soon as you say sit in the sit, fly the door open as fast as you can. One of the links that I'm going to put up there is wait at the door, where it's going to teach the dogs that just because the door is open doesn't mean they can go through the door. And when they go through it, when you're actually teaching them to go out, you're going to take one treat and throw it out, and that dog goes out and licks it up outside, just like the out command I showed you during our Facebook Live or FaceTime. You throw the one treat outside, and then when Barrington goes out and gets it, maybe you call it England. So England is Barrington's word to go through the open doorway, but he has to wait for permission. Don't ever use the word okay. Like I mentioned, it's just too common. And then Brixton, maybe you call it specials. And when you throw the treat out, he licks it up, and you say specials, and that means he can go in the backyard. That's not really very apropos, but I know you like the specials. So come up with a word that means, so each dog has a different word to go outside. That way, every time you go to the door, you tell them to sit. They both sit in unison. You open that door open, and you wait, and you decide, who do I want to let out first? England. And then Barrington goes out. So this way, you get to kind of help them Again, practice listening to you. It helps create a healthier leader-follower dynamic. It also helps them practice self-restraint and self-control. And it just is another richer way for you to sneak in a little bit of a control exercise very easily. Other rules: you shouldn't be allowed in the kitchen. Use that enforcement that I showed you. And if you have questions or problems with that, message me. I can share videos with you. I probably will have one linked above this one already. So look for, I call that invisible line, or keeping the dog out of the kitchen. Practice that. Go in the kitchen and practice making yourself something. Again, microwave a piece of bacon or some roast beef or something so it smells, and then pretend like you're cooking. And every time the dog crosses that threshold, you stop and use that third escalating consequence. You're marching right at them until eventually they learn, when they're cooking, I'm not allowed to go in the kitchen. Again, they're practicing some self-restraint or self-control. When you're eating, make sure that you're not letting them within 7 feet of you. If you have a carpet area rug around the couch, around the coffee table, then they're not allowed to go on the carpet when you're eating. The rest of the time they can come and go as they please. Remember, broccoli and carrots ward off 2 types of cancer in dogs, but also avocado is toxic to dogs, all of the avocado. So no more avocado. I would also really suggest you kind of stay away from giving them people food at all. If you do, put it in the microwave and wait until the next day so it doesn't smell associated with the meal that just you ate. Make sure you're eating something in 5 or more bites first. But feeding them on those snuffle mats would be great, because I think that's going to really help boost their self-esteem, confidence, and all the rest of that stuff. Let me see. We also talked about the escalating consequences. I'm not going to go through them in this video, but if you forget what they are, message me. I'm happy to go over them with you. Also for Brixton, confidence is a great insulator. Insecure dogs are usually the ones that are the most reactive. And you mentioned he's fearful of a lot of things, so we'll probably come back and work on helping him be less fearful, do some counter conditioning exercises, help him see the sounds or hear the sounds as a positive as opposed to a negative. But I would like you to start teaching him some new tricks or commands. Go to a separate room with him and teach both dogs one after the other. Maybe one of you teaches one dog here and the other dog somewhere else. Make sure you practice in different parts of your house. But I just went over a hurricane, is what I call it, which is basically teaching the dog to go in a circle. Bang, you're dead. Carry this. Beg. Whatever it is, there's a whole bunch of tricks and commands that you can teach your dogs. Go to YouTube. All these dog trainers want to get a TV show, so they'll teach you how to do all sorts of tricks and commands. Just make sure it's positive reinforcement only. If it talks about punishing the dog, squirting the dog, pinning the dog down, restrict, any of those things, that's the old way of training. We don't want to use that, because that'll just backfire. And if you're unsure about it, just send me a link and I'll be happy to look at the video and tell you whether or not it's a good one or not. I'd like you guys to set a commitment to, especially right now, because you don't have a lot of time. So, you know what? We're going to teach the dogs one new trick a week. And so each one of you maybe practices. One of you has Barrington, one of you has Brixton, and then the next time you practice later that day, you switch up. So you're working with both dogs. Both dogs get practice working with you and each handler in different locations. And keep on practicing that until by the end of the week, you want to be able to say the command word. Now, I say the command word once the dog knows it twice. If I'm trying to teach a dog to sit and it's standing there, I say sit, 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 sit. Well, what is it doing when it's hearing the word sit? It's standing. So eventually the word is going to be ignored, or he's going to think that sit means to stand up. So if the dog doesn't know it, what I do is I motion and I lure them by manipulating my hands. Dogs actually learn through a gesture first, and they learn through the verbal command afterwards. So if the dog knows the command, let's say the dog knows sit, I would say sit. When the dog sits, I would pet it under its chin and say sit after its butt hit the ground or after I put the treat in their mouth. So I'm really saying the command word twice. Once to tell it what to do, and then once to tell it why I'm paying it. And not good sit, not, oh, what a smart dog. Just sit, sit. And remember, they hear inflection. So don't say sit, sit. Say it consistently. And so eventually your dog has different things that you can do to redirect his attention. Focus is a good one because it's intentionally teaching the dog to focus. But if you teach your dog to we call it take a lap. Take a lap means for the dog to run from here, go around me, and then sit in front of me. So just taking a lap around me. It's really easy. I just lure the dog here and it gets around behind me. I hold the treat on the other hand and lure it back around, and then give it the treat when it gets in front. So if one of them's staring at the other one, I say, take a lap. Oh, come and circle you and I get a treat. You redirected their attention away from the other dog. You help them do something positive. And again, the more commands that we know, the better, the taller up, the higher up we sit, the more that chin is back or chin is up and the nose is up in the air. We learn new tricks and commands. We feel better about ourselves. If Sean does a great job lighting the set for something and the shot turns out to be amazing or is a cool light flash or whatever it is, he has a sense of pride. He feels good about that. Dogs are the same thing. And so some of the things you can do to insulate him are teaching Brixton some new tricks and commands. So try to make a commitment for each one of you to teach each the dogs a new trick or command, one a week for the next 8 weeks. Hopefully we're done with coronavirus at the end of this, and now you have 8 new tricks or commands and things you can do. Bang, you're dead, and Brixton is falling over. Or fetch, get me my slippers, or whatever it is. Get me a beer out of the fridge. These are all stuff you can teach your dog to do. Wipe their paws at the door. They're all legitimate things you can teach your dog to do. But if you can teach your dog to do these things, it's going to really be beneficial in terms of boosting their confidence, and that will make him less reactive towards other dogs. All right, so I think that's about everything that we've covered in our session. Now, I want you to call me or text me. If something happens, shoot, and always keep your camera this way. Sean is right. But try to film little things if you're not sure about it. Try to be about 10 or 4 more feet away and try to make sure I can see it sideways. I might be able to look at things video-wise and be able to give you some pointers and say, oh, this is what's going on in that particular situation. But I don't care if it's 6 months from now or if it's 6 years from now. The only reason I get mad at my clients is if you have a problem and you don't message me. I can't help you if you don't message me. So I don't charge for text or phone calls. Text is the best way to reach me. Text me at that 402 number and program it into your phone, Doggone Problems, and share it with Sean. So either one of you, if you forget my name in 6 months, you can always search for dog and I'll always be at your fingertips. I can't think if there's anything else that I forgot, so please let me know if I did, and I'm happy to include it in the link in the write-up. I'd like to have you guys take about a month to work on this stuff, and so where are we at now? We're basically the end of March. So like the end of April, I'd like to see kind of where we're at. Check in with me with good stuff. I love it when people tell me good stuff. Usually people just wait until stuff's not going well and they text me. But if you have breakthroughs and things are going well, that's great. The dogs start playing together a little bit. That's what we're looking for. Celebrate those small victories because there's going to be a whole lot of them. It's going to be hard for you to see them. So if you do recognize them, give yourself a pat on the shoulder, a pat on the back, or pat each other on the back. You did a good job. So try to teach them new tricks and commands, pet with a purpose, reward passive desired behaviors through what I call passive training. Practice the exercises that are going to be in the videos that I went over with you, and message me if you have any questions or problems. All right, well, this is Barrington and Brixton's roadmap to success. They're not here. They're that direction about, right now, I think about 1,600 miles. But this is their roadmap to success, and I'm David. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.